Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. We're very excited to launch this new book, The Routledge Companion to Women in Architecture, which was edited by Anna Sokolina. As I just heard earlier, the book is very hot off the presses. It was just launched at the end of June, and we're very excited to host its first launch event at the AA. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Manisha Verghese, and I run the public program here at the AA. And I'm delighted to introduce tonight's event and the wonderful group of speakers who are joining us. To tell you a little bit about the book, which you'll hear more about from the panel in this evening's event, The Routledge Companion to Women in Architecture celebrates pioneering women who've created and transformed cultural, spiritual, and physical environments in diverse regions around the globe and across time. Organized chronologically, it contains 29 chapters and invited 33 scholars to present portraits of leading women architects, teachers, writers, critics, as well as those who don't conform to any of those labels. Taking us all the way from the pre-industrial age to the present, it's a lasting resource that really spans the worlds of academia and practice, and it poses urgent questions as well as invites further scholarship into the too often overlooked contribution of women to the discipline of architecture. The book very much continues in the vein of a project we started here at the AA nearly a decade ago, which feels crazy to say out loud, which was to celebrate the centenary of women studying at the Architectural Association and was aptly titled AAXX 100. This took multiple forms over its 5-year duration, culminating in the autumn of the centenary year of 2017, with a major exhibition about the contribution by AA women to the profession, a collection of historical and critical writing, and an international conference organized by the AA in collaboration with the Paul Mullen Center. The project helped uncover many histories, ideas, projects, and people that had previously been hidden, and celebrated the important contribution of AA alumni, including Zaha Hadid, whose career we'll hear more about this evening through Nirma Cridge's contribution to this book. Joining Anna and Nirma as editor and contributor to this publication are architect and academic Ed Frith, architect, artist, and curator Yuri Avakumov, and designer, writer, and scholar Samantha Hardingham, who will each comment on the book and reflect on the role of women in architecture. So before I hand over to them to start tonight's discussion, I first wanted to introduce Eleanor Gorn, who's the head librarian at the AA, and who, like me, was also involved in the AAXX 100 project. And she's going to talk to us briefly about some of the events we organized as part of that, which will kind of contextualize tonight's discussion and talk about the important role the AA collections actually played in kind of shaping the project as well as the conversation. And it's really exciting also to see Lynn Walker in the audience, and she, together with Elizabeth Darling, were the kind of curators of the whole project and really spearheaded it across its duration. So Eleanor, over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Manisha. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, good. Thanks for that sort of introduction and also the description about the AAXX 100 project. I was just going to say a little bit more about the project and particularly about how it kind of related to the AA collections, including the library and the archives. As Manisha mentioned, the AAXX 100 project was this sort of multimedia project involving events, talks, exhibition and publications. Some of the talks brought to light new research or challenged the concerns and values of the professions. For example, one event was Kate Herron and others of her generation talking about architectural education in the 1970s. We also had another event from the architects, the Practice Assemble, talking about their method of their sort of collaboration and their activism with their work. There was also another event which was about a talk by various speakers challenging racism and celebrating diversity in architecture. And there was another event which was specifically about feminist theory and star architecture. But one aspect of the project was to try and engage the school community and to get sort of students sort of behind the project. And one of the main events was a presentation called On Presentation, which was held in May 2017, where a group of AA tutors were invited to present on Zaha Hadid's Planetary Architecture 2, the portfolio that, as you know, was published in 1983, this very incredibly important work. And the tutors were invited to present on it, to generate a conversation about the different ways of presenting an architectural project, really because the AA and possibly other architecture schools place so much emphasis on students presenting their work. But for the Library and Archives, the AAXX 100 project was really important because it was an opportunity for us to build our collections. So one of the things we did was that we arranged lots of interviews, I think almost 20 interviews with leading practitioners. It was led by Ed Bottoms, the AA archivist. So we interviewed people like Sue Rogers, Patty Hopkins, Eldred Evans, Amanda Levette, and Inette Austin-Smith. And all of these recordings were added to the archives. And also, as a result of the research for the exhibition and by doing the interviews, we were able to acquire student work from AA alumni. For example, we acquired the student work of Gillian Hopwood, who was at the AA in the 1940s, and then with her husband went on to work in Nigeria for most of their career. And amongst the drawings, there were also things like her student cardboard model of a theatre that she designed and which she'd kept from the 1940s, and she presented that to the archives. So that's just a little bit about the AAXX 100 project, which for us was incredibly important to sort of raise awareness of those issues. And I'm very much looking forward now to hearing from Anna Sokolina, the editor of the Routledge Companion to Women of Architecture, who's going to tell us more about this particular volume. Anna?
Sorry, Anna, you're on mute.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. And thank you, Norma, for organizing this book launch event and for inviting me to introduce our new groundbreaking anthology, fresh from publisher, just less than a week, the Routledge Companion to Women in Architecture. Also, my heartfelt gratitude to Andrew Whitaker from the Architectural Association Bookshop, and to Manny J. Verges, of course, the head of the Architectural Foundation Public Program. Everyone knows you for hosting this event, and to everyone for your engagement and synergy. The Routledge Companion to Women in Architecture. Oh, can you see my presentation? Should I share?
No, if you can share your screen, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. And there. Can you see it now?
We can see your screen. I think you just have to go into presentation, slideshow, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
There.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right. So the Routledge Companion of Women in Architecture, or to Women in Architecture, eliminates the names of pioneering women who, over time, continue to foster, shape, and build cultural, spiritual, physical environments in diverse regions across the globe. It uncovers the remarkable evolution of women's leadership, professional perspectives, craftsmanship, and scholarship in architecture from the pre-industrial age to the present. I'm showing you here our front cover. I designed a collage that includes 6 images, such as San Bernardino City Hall in San Bernardino, California, 1971-73, by architect Norma Merrick Sklaric. She was the first African-American woman in the United States to become, in 1959, a licensed member of the American Institute of Architects. Or a residential mixed-use high-rise condominiums in Nagatyno, Moscow. It's down there on the right. Russia, 1970-1982, lead architect Rima Petrovna Aldonina. Now, the global pandemic, social unrests, natural disasters eclipse the world map. And we turn to architecture and history to understand the reality of the present moment. Recent chronologies capture the critical extent to which life has been sustained in extreme circumstances, yet they consistently lack representations of women's leadership. And we need to acknowledge why and who have benefited and still do from the magnificent voices being muted of the female half of the Earth's population. In this volume, we are filling the void of fundamental knowledge and follow our vision of preparing for the future by reconstructing the past. The chapters uncover significant yet largely unexplored instances of women's agency in architecture and survey an extensive legacy. The arguments reference institutions and archives that collect and promote women's work. True gems that hold an extraordinary wealth of historical records in urgent need of further excavations. Okay, next. The book is organized chronologically in 5 parts, outlining the stages of women's expanding engagement and contributions to architecture through the centuries. It contains 29 chapters written by 33 recognized scholars committed to broader topographies across time and place, and feature practicing architects, urban planners, landscape interior designers, artists, teachers, writers, critics, other kinds of all kinds of professionals in the built environment. The novelty of our vision is in presenting not only a collection of case studies, but in advancing an inclusive and incisive overview of the topic, with more attention paid to the integrity of the built environment. It is a trailblazer, an invaluable and exciting resource for professionals, academics, students, historians, and general public. The framework of thematic threads ties the parts of the anthology into a consistent whole. The book begins with the dedication, process, list of illustrations, contributors' biographies, preface, acknowledgements, introduction, and concludes with an index. Chapters are intertwined through their objectives and are structured based on threefold grid, which implies an introduction, main part, and conclusion, and accompanied with a bibliography, detailed notes, and original illustrations with captions referring to the authenticity and provenance of images. The core of the volume comprises of 5 parts, and an overview is provided for each part and includes introduction of each chapter. The stories and images in these pages reflect the vibrancy and resiliency of talented women. The proposed margins, as in any theoretical assumption, are schematic and gauge overlaps of time frames and geographies. Historical topography studies by the contributors are informed by the earliest available references. I commissioned submissions internationally and carefully selected a collection of chapters to create a cohesive read. The contents are sustained through 2 rounds of double-blind peer review, and considering a standard curriculum of 15-16 weeks per semester, the book is instrumental as a general reading for a 1 or 2 semester academic survey. Okay, I'm showing here also one of our front cover images, Women in Architecture, International Women's Day, and the importance of recognizing female designers. A graphic design published on March 5th, 2015, sounds already 6 years ago, by Moss Architecture and Urban Design Studio in Chicago, Illinois. In our book, we aim to illuminate and acknowledge the achievements of those faceless champions. We leave out the narratives focused on, in particular, on the feminist movement or those preoccupied with compare-contrast investigations of male versus female proficiencies. Topics of that nature may be a subject matter of another discipline. Our book has been envisioned as an architecture history resource, integrating discoveries that mine substantial layers of data and broaden the geographic horizons of learning. Showing you here front, spine, and back of the book cover. Our book challenges traditional histories. We are now buttressed by the commitment of professional and academic communities and empowered by numerous discoveries of the resilience of individual characters. And we hope to energize the growing interest in broadening architectural history and advocate change by featuring fascinating role models whose contributions to the built environment encourage and inspire readers of all generations. Thank you. Who's next? Thank you very much.
I am. So thank you so much, Anna, and thank you everyone else for joining us. And Sam has arrived as well. I will start sharing now. Okay, thank you so much for being here today. I apologize, it was organized at very short notice, but I wanted to make this happen now at the end of this unprecedented year, instead of postponing it back to autumn, because so many other events have been put back or altogether cancelled. And I came to think that even if imperfect and rushed is better than delaying it and potentially not happening at all. I will try to speak very briefly and outline some of the basic approaches in my research, which stemmed from my PhD on the Soviet avant-garde, which dealt with architectural visions which aren't simply unbuilt, but unbuildable. The main challenge was for me to organize such rich and such, in terms of quantity, such voluminous material, and reduce it to such a limited, small, short number of words, as well as how to reduce this wealth of visual material and select, in this case, just 5 black and white images. So in that sense, I see this very much as a start, as imperfect and incomplete, but I hope an important beginning. So let us start with the beginning in a literal sense, and how after joining the AA in 1972, after studying mathematics in Beirut and briefly interior design in London, Zaha Hadid came to the school. She apparently came with a headscarf, but quickly stopped wearing it because she didn't want to be defined by it, or she didn't want to be distinguished in that way. It's a difficult time, and despite this, Hadid quickly developed her own trajectory and even a following. She worked extremely hard at all projects that she was given. It seems unsurprising that quite early on she led a student group at the AA, which at the time was having many units which shunned conventional architectural drawings and buildings, and approached the head of the AA at the time, Alvin Borowski, and demanded that they are being taught how to draw buildings. This was the drawings, the earliest drawings that we have of Hadid's work, which were from Leon Crier's unit, housing scheme in Swiss Cottage in her 3rd year. And you can see how these disciplined and very organized drawings seem to be very different from what she came later to be famous for. Leon Crier noted Zaha was very unquiet. She couldn't draw really. She was all over the map. She was always incredibly energetic and helpful around the class, and she practically became my assistant. But she was really struggling and tempestuous. I set her to do a project on Trafalgar Square. The idea was to shrink it down and make it into more of an Italian-style piazza. Well, that wasn't her cup of tea at all. Notably, this may be the first time, but not the last time, that the teacher said how Hadid couldn't draw, and presumably how he taught her how to. In her fourth and fifth year, Hadi joined Rem Koolhaas Zengelis unit, Diploma Unit 9. And Koolhaas also had very similar remarks, only he went even further. He stated that she couldn't draw, and he forced her to learn by actually physically locking her in the AA, and his partner, Madeline Visitor, in the now room, which is the square room. And in her defiant and somewhat kind of dismissive fashion, Hadi replied that actually he may have thought that he locked her, but she could and did escape through the registrar's office. Just let him think that she was locked. During this time, Koolhaas was delivering the famous Delirious New York lecture series and was also being influenced heavily by the Russian avant-garde, Soviet avant-garde movements, and which of course influenced Hadid as well. And here are some of the images from Malevich's famous tecton or architecton designs, including the vertical one, which is collaged into the urban scale, which is the again, in Hadid's own words, in her fifth year, she struggled, although their approach was much more suited. And then came her final project, prior to which she apparently was ill for 2 months ill in bed with bronchitis. And at the end of this, she presented Malevich's tectonic, put it into Thames, and made it horizontal. When asked afterwards about why, what were the reasons for this, somewhat flippantly she responded by saying how she couldn't actually remember why. But however, what was important was that Koolhaas and Zengelis let her recognized and gave her time and space for her development, and this project was received incredibly well, and she won the diploma prize. After graduating, in her final report, Koolhaas again famously wrote how she started very slowly, but then she ended up as a planet on her own, which is what subsequently the exhibition that Eleanor mentioned in the beginning, Planetary Architecture 2, became to be named after. For a brief period of time, Hadid worked at OMA. Again, there are different accounts. So according to Koolhaas, she worked for them. According to Hadid, she joined as a partner, and that was the only way she could have joined, as an equal partner. And she lasted only for 1 year. You can see in this famous image of OMA manifesto how Hadid is the only single figure in the background, and she could almost be easily overlooked. She's the only foreign, and also the only she's younger than either of the four. And very quickly afterwards, she branched out on her own and set up her own practice. And on the right hand, you can see somewhat curious label for soap, which Zaha designed at the time and gifted to Madeline Riesendorf. And she again, it shows how much she experimented and how she kind of developed different approaches during her time. Here we have two images of Madeleine Riesendorp, which are both of Hadid, of course, and one of them is a painting which is showing her in full color, as well as showing what seems to be modernist American skyscraper, whilst the one on the right-hand side is just a sketch and uncolored. Here we see Hadid straddling something that clearly resembles Malevich's Teutonic. And I think it's interesting to speculate on how this could be an attempt of by Riesendorp to claim or to reclaim Hadid as in world of OMA as opposed to the world of suprematism and Malevich's avant-garde project. And the portfolio and the exhibition of the Planetary Architecture 2, which happened at a time when after Hadid won her first international competition for Hong Kong Peak. It's not accidental that it's black in a black box and with a red cover with a black square. And one of the pieces in there was this amazing painting, which we later see also in her work. And the last project for the peak for Hong Kong, we can see these amazingly inspirational painting which turn the whole city into a landscape. And here on the right-hand side, the image of the divers is the last or the only image where we can find where actually Hadid uses human figure, and we can not find after that. It's only ever abstraction. There's no human. There are no human figures and no nature, no trees. Here are some of the images from the exhibition opening, and apparently the model for the Teutonic was cake that they actually cut and they ate. And you can see how everything in the gallery was used to really three-dimensionally communicate the paintings and drawings and models, as well as the floor, wall, and even the ceilings. And here is a painting called The World, and again on this on the looking at it on small computer screen, it just doesn't do it justice. But we could, in some ways, we could say that this marks the end of the kind of the unbuildable, and where for Hadid she starts building immensely successful buildings. This is one of the last three projects for competition that for Trafalgar Square buildings. where we can see different influences from the Soviet avant-garde here, even Leonidov commissariat for the People's Commissariat of Heavy Industries, and literal use of airplanes, which are being inverted in Hadi's vision. Instead, what they did was they unfortunately rebuilt the neoclassical building, which is such a great pity and huge loss for London. And here is, we come to the perhaps, or definitely the most controversial projects of all, which was proven to be the stadium in Qatar, where Hadid was criticized so much and even blamed for the conditions and even deaths of construction workers during the building of the projects, which were simply untrue. And a New York Times critic claimed that hundreds of people died during the construction, even before the construction started. This is what prompted Frank van der Hoven to write an article titled "The Powerless Architect: How Zaha Hadid Became the First Person Working on Al Bakr Stadium to Actually Did Die." Because unfortunately she came to be criticized and in so unfairly, and she succeeded in suing the critic, and even after that many were saying that she shouldn't have engaged and that she should have just pulled out from the project, and that she shouldn't have, and that anybody would have been criticized for this particular project. However, I believe that I think that she was unfairly singled out. She was a female and of Arabic origin, and that no other male architects and star architects were treated in the same way, despite them being engaged with many similar projects in similar regimes. This was these are the images on the left showing her London apartment, which was sold quickly after she passed away. And when she was interviewed by towards the latter part of her life, she asked the journalist, the Guardian journalist, to wait for her in her apartment because famously she was a workaholic, but also she was always late. And the journalist said she struggled to describe Hadid as feminist icon, as she and she even commented on how she didn't have any children, how cold her flat was, and how she would rather sleep in Hadid's car. And again, we have unwarranted criticism of someone who was so successful and so accomplished and worked incredibly hard. And a lot has been made out of the fact that in her apartment, apparently, there was no kitchen. But this was true, that she took it out because she preferred to eat out and socialized. And when interviewed, she did say very clearly how it was not a home. It was somewhere she would sleep, and conveniently it was above the office, and she would often take her clients there. Apparently, as the clients would struggle to sit on her designs, which some of which resemble stalactites and stalagmites, she would ask her assistant to bring a conventional chair for her to sit on. And it seems no coincidence that one of the the only home that she designed was also for a Russian client, and it was sadly completed after her death, so she never saw it being complete. on the outskirts of Moscow. It was said that they were exceptionally good match as a client, who she described as Russian James Bond. And the access to this home is above a forest with 360-degree view of the landscape and sky beyond. Internal spaces are light and compact, resembling an inside of an airplane, and physically very small. And finally, I wish to leave you with images of her sketchbook. Allegedly, she burnt the edges and carried one with all her times. Rather than her apartment, that seems to me that this was where she truly felt at home. The burnt edges created this unique unsettling effect, something looking very old and dated on the outside, suggesting something very futuristic inside, as though the sketchbook themselves are ruins in reverse. The more they age, the more inspiring and even forward-looking they get. To continue researching and looking closely at her work, rather than simplistically and generally dismissing everything because we may disagree with who the client was. And I'd like to end this with a thank you for everyone, especially for those of you who made it here at such short notice, and those of you who helped me with my research. Most of all, I wish to thank one person who isn't here, my cousins, who sadly left us forever in 2020. Cousins was a friend of Hadid, and whilst he was at times critical of her, he was also immensely protective of her achievements and recognition, and recognized of how unique her contribution was. And now I'd like to hand it over to Ed Frith, who in some ways he anticipated this, my chapter, because he invited me to give a lecture at Bournemouth Arts University, which was part of a series for a drawing studio designed by Peter Cook, which had it opened only a few days, I think it was, before she tragically passed away. And subsequently, the drawing studio hosted exhibition on called Evolution on her practice work. So thank you, and thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Nirma. That was really fascinating. And this afternoon, I've been rewatching your lecture that you gave at Bournemouth, which you've summarised beautifully there, and also in the book. I've had the honour of seeing your chapter, which again, really fascinating insights into Zaha's early work and the drawings. And it's a very beautiful moment that we had in the space that you can see an image of behind us at AUB, which was designed by Peter Cook, who asked Zaha, as his favourite student, to open it. And amazingly, she came and she opened it. And then tragically, just a few days later, she died in Miami. We knew that she wasn't so well, but at the same time, it was so special moment for both the university and also for everybody there that she was there. And I've got a few images of that process. Nirma gave me about 1 day's notice to create something around this, and it's a very complex area. So I'm just going to very briefly share my screen just to make you aware of how complex this is. I hope you can all see the screen. This is actually AUB and the AA coming together at the heart of it, because there are so many strange interconnections that I was investigating. There is obviously Zaha and the work she did as a student and her coming to AUB, But there's this figure over here, if you can see this part of the drawing. Can you see my mouse as well? I hope you can. This is Nirma Kridge. And her trajectory into AUB was also quite fascinating. Because she arrived from Sarajevo, and her own drawings are quite magnificent. I taught her briefly in Birmingham for a few years, and her journey from the war-torn Sarajevo, her projects ranging from glass palaces to snipers' homes were really fascinating. So she arrives in this milieu of AA and AUB. And obviously Zaha, we were very honored to come in via Peter Cook to connect. And then we created an exhibition and a lecture series around Zaha's office were fantastically generous, because obviously they were aware of her connection to AUB, and that was almost the last event she did. So they helped with an exhibition that we put on, and we had a lecture series as well that connected in with, which was amazing for the students. And Nirma was part of it, along with people like Owen Hatherley, Paul Finch. We had a very strange and eclectic bunch of people, as well as the Zaha office being involved. But I actually thought there was another strand running through this. And this is where my mind, unfortunately, wanders off into many other strands. And Elizabeth Scott, who is 1924 graduating from the AA, is a profound influence in Bournemouth. She was born there, she made a theatre, she did the Stratford Theatre. And her line running through this is quite fascinating, that she's still connected into the Peter Cook world at the other end of it. I never expected to create these connections between these amazing women of Elizabeth Scott, Nirma Kridge, and Zaha Hadid. And then, unfortunately, I wandered even further down this line and went even further into Bournemouth and found, of course, the Shelley family are buried there. And the mother figure of the Shelley family, the creators of Frankenstein, is Mary Wollstonecraft, the writer of The Vindication of the Rights of Women. So I know that we don't want to go into feminism, says Anna, in the terms of the book, but for me, she's a really important figure, a proto-feminist, as she's described. So just a few images to help this strange wandering that I did thanks to Nirma and Zaha. I'll just see if I can go, wrong way. So this was the opening of the drawing studio, with other guests, Mike Davis, obviously from the AA as well, and Peter Cook in the middle, and Zaha. But Zaha did a wonderful act when she was there. She made a drawing, just a line, to open the building and to create this moment. Interesting figures in the background there. And here is the book that strangely connects Bournemouth and this image behind to where I am now, which is in the dissenting area of Hackney in London, and where Mary Wollstonecraft came from, and is such an interesting figure to track through and trail and everything she did. And there's a little bit, thanks to Nirma, that I've also been looking at, which is a William Blake frontispiece to a Mary Wollstonecraft children's book, which deals with the rights of women as well. I think that's, and then my final image, I don't know if it's going to come. No, it's not going to come. Was to be Tales of Love. It's straight there. It is. Oh, it is coming. It's taking its while to emerge. And in a way, the death of Zaha being a moment of reflection and thought, that someone like that has to inspire so many others to come on, and reading the connections into other, like Amanda Levitt writes wonderfully about the influence of Zaha. But I think, in a way, I was surprised to be asked, Nirma. I'm very honoured to be asked to say something. So, and you always say that I should be, that my teaching methods are restless. So there is a connection with it to inspire others. So I'll move on now to others. Thank you, Nirma.
Thank you so much. Yuri?
Well, I also have a couple of stories on Zaha. The first one happened in 1990, 22nd of November in Darmstadt. I had my 15 minutes of fame there because it was a conference there because of 100th anniversary of L. Lisitsky. And the conference was in two parts. One part was for art historians who gave their papers on Russian avant-garde and on Lisitsky And the second was a number of homages of architectural homages. And I was on the second part, and in this part there was also Wolf Prix, a couple of German architects, and Zaha. And I was first in this session, and I presented three of my homages to Mayakovsky, Tatlin, and to Lisitsky. Then there was Prix. I remember his first image. He showed the famous photo of L. Lisitsky shot from above with a shadow. And he replaced this photo with a photo of him and Helmut Swieczynski on the same pose and on the same shadow, but with two shadows. And there was Frankfurt architects presented the reconstruction of Lisitsky Tribune, Lenin's Tribune, and there was a time for Zaha, but she was late because of some jury in Frankfurt, and everybody should wait for her, and it was a break announced, and this break, which was about 1 hour, people only arriving to auditorium. And when she finally appeared, it was fully packed there. And people were standing in the doors, and people were everywhere. It was like about, I think about 1,000 people in this quite, well, not big auditorium. And she started like with two projectors, and she showed slides, and at the same time she complained on her assistant who changed the carousels, and she was like a bosun on a hurricane bow, and giving commands to unseen sailors, and it was very impressive. But the most impressive thing was the images of her that she showed us. And it was like reincarnated Lisitsky. And it was really impressed me. And then the organizers put us to the row in front of auditorium, and we were sitting like I don't know whom, and the students started to asking questions, and it was sort of absurd for me. It was like asking musicians after the rock concert. And we behaved differently, of course, and Wolf Prix sort of joked. I sort of excused. Zaha sort of loudly defended herself from the questions about the role of the social role of architecture. But then there was a reception, and very peaceful, and students kept approaching her, and she was perfectly friendly with them. That was first meeting in person. But before that, in 1984, I didn't know about her existence, but I did know about her existence in January 1984 from the bulletin of International Union of Architects. There was a news about somebody who won the competition on Hong Kong Peak. And it was like this size photo, very poor quality, but it was very enough for me. I realized that somebody did the architectural project in kind of influenced by Russian suprematism. I myself, at that time, took part in the competition, a UNESCO competition for young architects, something about House for Today, and I designed a living capsule in a form of Russian matryoshka. And this matryoshka was sort of a very archaic forms, a collage of archaic forms combined with equipment, contemporary equipment. And we even came to the second stage of the competition with this entry. But after this, seeing this little picture, I changed everything. And the final entry was a light egg, very dynamic, with plants sort of like prawns of Elisitsky. And it was due to this little picture of Zaha. And I could say that since that, I never betrayed my patriotic love to Russian avant-garde. And this is all only due to Zaha appearance in my life. Since then, we met several times in Venice, in Moscow, and in London. And I never told this second story to her. But of course, I'm always grateful that he dramatically changed my life.
Thank you so much, Yuri. And last but not least, Sam.
Hello, Norma and everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to this evening. It's a what a privilege, and lovely to hear about the book, Anna. I look forward to reading more, but also have had a little insight into Norma's chapter, which is fascinating to read. I have a strange recollection of Zaha. I have to say, I was a student at the AA in the late 80s, early 90s, and I have continued to have a long and close relationship with the AA ever since in various different forms, and now have gone on to start to run another kind of school of architecture, very, very different to the AA. Maybe not so different. It feels a little bit like the AA, but maybe 200 years ago or 150 years ago. So, you know, things probably do come full circle. But at this particular moment, you know, the AA is, one's mind is full of very memorable moments, of course, as a student and then as a tutor. But in my very early career as a student, in my second year, was faced with Zaha as a critic on a jury. And being a second year student was fairly oblivious to who anybody really was, because you're sort of blind. You're only terrified about what you've produced and put on the wall, and then slightly dazzled by what anybody's going to say about it. Anyway, I was faced with Zaha, who simply responded to my presentation by saying, "So what?" And I thought, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. And she said it again. And she said it again. And I think she probably said, "So what?" about 10 times, until I said, "I think I need to go away and think about that. Thank you." Because nobody was going to interrupt either. And of course, I left thinking, I have no idea what Zaha was just saying to me, or who this person was really, other than I knew she designed the sofas that were on display in the bar at the time. So I had a bit of an idea about what she was about. Anyway, that has obviously stuck with me, and I have thought about it so many times, and I have thought about it every time I have sat down and had to be a critic in a student's jury. And I've thought, that question is sat there going, "So what? Why are you doing what you're doing?" And of course, I understood what it really was about, is what matters to you. What matter? What she was only ever asking, what is it out of all of this work that you've done that matters to you? And why do we need to talk? What do you want us to talk about and have that conversation? And it was a fairly brutal at the time lesson to learn. I can't say I really liked her at that particular moment. but I was extremely grateful for that exchange, although it was a bit one-sided. I think that, and she was, I don't know whether she really was a teacher. She wasn't trying to be a teacher, but she certainly wasn't, but she was an amazing communicator verbally in a very concise way, an amazing visual communicator and spatial communicator. So I think that's an extraordinary legacy to leave behind. There were just one other thing that two little tiny things that Noma has touched on in her research and echoed in my mind, the business of being locked in a studio. I don't know whether that was adopted also as AA practice, but that happened to me as well. So maybe I'm in good company. I feel better now that Zaha was also locked in a room and made to draw. Maybe that was our problem as AA students. We didn't want to do that. But yes, it happened to me, and I didn't have the wit to figure out how to escape. So I finished the drawing. But that was a very nice thing to hear that had occurred. And then the other observation that you made, Noma, about her paintings, which I have to say, the thing that, and again, it wasn't at the time. It's taken a very, very long time to really understand and appreciate why must I like and must I be interested in what Zaha did. And what I really realized at the time, those paintings were hanging on the wall in the bar at the AA at some point. And she, coming from really quite a rural background, she made me understand how to love the city and what there was to love about the city and why cities needed to be loved and thought about and depicted and imagined. And her paintings really did open that up to me in a way that I don't think anything else of that generation really did in such a compelling way. So I'm very grateful to her for making those paintings, which I know much criticized as not paintings and not drawings, but whatever they are as forms of communication, they absolutely spoke about the love of the city, and they had no nature and no trees. And I had only ever grown up around nature and trees. So it was just a totally remarkable thing that something could exist in that way. So I'm very grateful to have had do that, and also open up the world of constructivism and suprematism, which I would never have really discovered, I don't think, or I wouldn't have in that way. So that was also, those paintings were a portal into looking into a completely other world as well. So yes, I'm sorry, a lot of ramblings, but it's so nice to be able to do something like this, because it really made me think about why Zaha, what has she done? I haven't really been in her buildings. I've never had to work or live or be or really visit her buildings, but what she unlocked in terms of thinking around architecture and what architecture could be, and the AA for hosting that and allowing that, giving her the space to do that is an extraordinary thing. So both the school and her as an individual are good contribution to civilization, I'd say.
Thank you so much. I would like to open up for some questions to the audience if we have time. Don't know if anybody would like to comment or ask any questions. There was a question in the chat about where can we find Hadi's sketches, and her collection. We have at the AA, we only have her student work, and it's mainly digitized, but the collections are in private collections, so you can find some of the work I've shown in Alvin Boyarsky's private collection, and also the two main archives are Zaha Hadid Foundation, which is her family, and then Zaha Hadid Architects, of course. And the amount of physically, the amount of material is incredible. It's mainly in storage. As I said, her flat was sold immediately. And there is this kind of wealth of material which I think waits to be looked at closely and studied and analysed, rather than kind of what we tend to do is we tend to generalise, just look at one photograph, or even not even that. The same for handed sketches. I think most of them are in the Zahadid Foundation, Zahadid Trust. So are there any other comments or questions, or just to say thank you so much to everyone.
Sam's got a question, I think.
Ed?
I think Sam's got a question I just saw come in. Joe Grant. Do you see it, Sam?
Yes, I can see. I'm just reading the question. I don't know, maybe Grant, is Joe Grant there?
Maybe she wants to ask it.
Is Joe Grant anywhere?
I've asked Joe to unmute to ask a question.
So that I'm sure that I understand the question.
So what?
So what? But cannot one argue that what it means to you may not mean anything else to others? Joe, do you want to ask that question live and direct? No. Maybe not.
I'm surprised you just didn't put so what.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a good question to ask. It's a very valuable one. I was talking to a fire officer about it today. Yes, I'm not sure I can help, Joe. But that's okay. We'll pick it up another time. Does anyone else know what that question means?
I mean, maybe to read into it, I think it was maybe something about how, if Zaha was asking you, so what, how does its relevance to you personally relate to the significance of the project you were doing, or any project any of us are doing, to a wider audience?
Yeah, I really just think it was a very simple. Maybe it was the way she was asking it. I mean, I think we were very used to being asked, why are you doing what you're doing? And then you could understand then you would have to think about why you were doing that. I think it was just the way that she was extremely, she just cut to the chase. She was just extremely direct and used very few words. And that was quite shocking, to be asked so directly. You've done all this work, but so what? And there was no attempt to we're very, very polite in the way that we discuss work now. And that maybe that's a lovely thing, and that's very good. But there was it was just such a directly shocking question, and that I couldn't answer at the time. But I realized it meant what I had to look at what was in the project. And I honestly I can remember what the project was now. But it was a very big, it was a mile-long trench across London, which I was going to fill with various different things. And the interest to me actually was figuring out how to dig a mile-long trench and what that technically. But I hadn't the wit at the time to think that was simply the answer. Because I didn't expect that question, but that's all right. And I could only wish to give confidence to other students to know that it's okay if you don't know the answer to the question. You'll get it eventually. So that's what it means to me. There's no rush. You'll get it eventually.
It's interesting.
I would understand it as a kind of provocation to really defend your project, to really stand up and say what it is that's important. In my experience with how did and partly the reason why I called the chapter Restless was that I saw her many times take part in a panel or discussion or lectures and listen for a long time, very patiently, and then kind of say something like, you might, and I think once it was considering representation and considering kind of computer generating and generated imagery and parametricism, and she simply said, the difference is that I haven't stopped searching. I don't think I have the answer. I am still curious and still kind of trying to find. And I think that's really important, to remain kind of not settled, not kind of complacent and comfortable with what you've achieved, but actually to keep on looking for new ways and sometimes making mistakes and sometimes, but to keep on kind of pushing oneself. I think there was a question. There were questions. Don't know if people would like to just raise hand or put. So Irene, would you like to ask the question or?
Hello. No, that was fine. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So the question was, do you think Hadid had a masculine perspective in the way she projected her architecture? And I would say no. I would say that she was a strong person, a very strong person, and she didn't. It wasn't. I don't think that's a particularly masculine. I think that's that's can be a feminine or female trait. Certainly in her case, it was. I don't know if anybody else would like to add anything. I know Yuri is impatiently waiting for football. I just wanted to mention how grateful I am for Yuri for his support during my PhD days when I did research in Moscow. And I'm not exaggerating to say that if it wasn't for him and his help, that it would have been quite a different PhD. I wouldn't have been able simply to access all these amazing museums and archives. And even with the help and direct introductions, and it still was at a time like Kafkaesque kind of situations where in trying to access these archives, many of which are state archives. And I think that's another thing that's really important, is to try and make kind of create new material from the projects that Eleanor introduced at the start, and because we have so many recorded lectures, we have so many recorded discussions and panels that as well as and some of it is in danger of disappearing, because sadly we are losing all these some of these people who have invaluable lessons for us all. If anybody would like to have one final, maybe Anna or manager.
Sure. Thank you again. I appreciate it so much. It's just it's a big event for us, and we just the book is truly a 3-year labor of love, collaboration, and amazing engagement of 33. Much more people have been engaged, and just 33 contributors stayed with us. But I received over 60 proposals. It was such a torture for me to choose someone's chapters over the others. So everyone is such an amazing star in their own right. So I appreciate it. It's a great accomplishment. And I really hope it will become a catalyst for new books and new programs and new modules, and probably will become a catalyst for new surveys and other courses and inspire new generations. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you for bringing this book into the world and to all of us. It's been posted in the chat a few times this evening, but if you are interested in getting your own copy of the book, it's being sold at the AA Bookshop online for a special launch price for the whole month of July. And so the link is in the chat if you would like to buy it. And thank you so much to all of you for sharing your stories, your memories, your ideas around not just the book, but also around Zaha Hadid and her incredible career. It was really fascinating to get to listen to that this evening. And big thank you to Noma for making this event happen.